Comics are tough to make, especially by yourself. Not only that you have to have a story and have a decent understanding of the art fundamentals in order to draw the comic, but it takes a lot of dedication and time as well. So much time that in Western comics they need a penciler, an inker, a colorist, a letterer in order to release the issue on time. And I don't even know what mangakas up there in Japan are on, but these guys respawn every single morning and produce chapter after chapter like it's no tomorrow. Maybe that's why up until now, if I ever tried to create something that resembles a comic, I always got frustrated and I wasn't consistent at all. But not this time. This time, I had friends. A friend who was way more passionate about this entire comic book thing than I ever was. He managed to somehow convince me to give it another go, and together we came up with the story and I drew the whole thing and we made the first one shot. And it's not something big, it's only a 15-page comic with the pacing that's way too fast. But hey, it's our first time and I'm proud of it. And because of that, in this video I'll show you exactly what I did, where I messed up and what I learned from it, step by step. I'm gonna try to be completely transparent with you, so that maybe I can help some of you guys who are just starting out making your first comic. And besides, if two Eastern European nerds manage to somehow pull this off, you definitely can too. Alright, so the first thing that you ever need is a story and a script. Our story, I mean for the entire comic book, not the one shot, took us around 1 to 2 years to figure out, and we already have content for like 3 seasons, but still there's always room for improvement. And you know, when it's something personal, you just want to make it perfect, and inspiration can flow from anywhere all the time. So until I start drawing, we'll probably never stop editing the whole thing. Now, we were only 2 guys working on the story, but that doesn't mean everything went as smooth as you might think. We had our differences. World building. What was that? It's me, my friend. Remember? You took your eye off the ball. You're too focused on the characters, and you forgot the most important thing. Character development and story is enough. The comic will still be good. Good, but not great. What about the magic system? How will we even explain how this world came to be? I just want to get to the drawing part already. Then you're weak. You'll always be weak until you take control. No. No. We need world building.
Okay, maybe I'm not the best guy to give an advice on how to create a good comic, so just take everything I say with a grain of salt.
But if there ever is a secret ingredient on how to create a good story, just use your experiences from real life and the stuff that inspire you. Even if your life sucks and the stuff that inspire you are kinda weird, that can even work out better than you think. Okay, maybe don't go overboard with that stuff, but still, our story was mostly made that way. And not only ours. For example, Tatsuki Fujimoto, the creator of Chainsaw Man, he based his character Power to Eric Cartman from South Park. And Denji and Puchira's relationship was inspired by Finn and Jake's from Adventure Time. Even the new movie's opening has references to Western films that the creator is a fan of. Now chances are you won't get your story perfect on the first try. It's gonna suck, unless you're some sort of a genius, which no we're not. I mean, we had some really weird ideas. Now the cool part about the one shot is that it can just be its own thing and never have a continuation. It's just something to get your feet wet and get you started, even if you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle and your story is not finished. On the other hand, like our comic, it can also be a good introduction to your world and characters that you've built for so long.
But that's simply not possible. And I don't find this funny anymore.
It never was supposed to be. Why isn't it possible?
It's just not.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
So this is the script from our one shot, and as you can see it's in Bulgarian, which means you won't get spoiled the story. But you can also see that it's pretty messy and unprofessional looking. And to me and my friend it was fine, because we weren't going to show it to anybody. Well, except you guys right now, but it served its purpose. And even while I was drawing it, I continued to revisit the script and edit it just to fit better the art and story. Ideally, this is maybe how a more professional script should look like, describing in detail every single panel on the page, every emotional state the characters are in. But again, that depends solely on you and your preferences. And also if you're working with other people, maybe another artist, and you want to control the amount of creative freedom you want to give them. But in the end, there is no industry standard for scripting, so you can do it however you like. So here I've broken down the most essential things that you might need for a one-shot script. First and foremost, you must have a simple plot with a beginning and a resolution. Second, characters must have a goal or problem so that the story keeps you interested. Number 3 is to have a strong moment, a character-defining moment, something that stands out. Number 4, the conflict must be easy to resolve. We're not building an entire character arc here and introducing Avengers level threat villains, so just try to keep it simple. And for last, just cut anything unnecessary. When you've made your first draft, initial idea, script, whatever you want to call it, just read it through, revisit it, and cut anything that doesn't help the story.
This is the key to making a quality story right here. It's probably the simplest thing ever, but you'd be surprised how hard it is to get something to fit in that.
Alright, next stage. Concept art. So you've probably heard this one before, but try to keep your character designs as simple and easy to read as possible. Because if they have a lot of details, you're just gonna waste a lot of time. Especially with manga, where everything is black and white, the noise can really mess up the readability. Maybe that could be a different case if you do the design for a game, because the 3D artist will make it one time and the rest is history. But for comics and animation, it's just better for your mental health to do a less detailed design. And hey, if you don't believe me, just hear what my boy Kishimoto has to say about it. My initial impulse is to use as much line and ornamentation as possible, until the visual concept is in danger of becoming lost amidst the busy little details. This is especially true of principal characters. I got so caught up in what I'm doing with them. I make things much too difficult for myself, until I finally have a sense to step back and ask myself, am I really going to be able to draw such a fussy, complicated character over and over, panel after panel and issue after issue, week in and week out? There was far too much going on visually with Sasuke, and too many lines overall. So I simplified him into a good, basic contrast to Naruto's visual image. Now personally, I don't think the first designs were that detailed, but you heard the man, simple and clean is the way. Or should I say, the ninja way. Now you don't necessarily have to do this, but I use color in the designs just to visually show the personalities of the main characters. We have Valor and Yaku. Valor's primary color is red. Red color is often associated with unpredictability, passion, hot temper. Yaku's color is blue, which is connected to spirituality, serenity, trust, and wisdom. But even with that, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was lazy with the design, specifically for the one-shot, because there they had slightly different clothing. I just thought I could save time that way by not drawing designs for such short comic. But in reality, that wasted me a lot of time, where I had to constantly flip through previous pages to reference what I've drawn so that I can stay consistent with the characters. And just having turnarounds of the character, facial expressions, and really anything that can help you draw your character consistent on every single page, it can save you a lot of time later, so don't neglect it like I did. And the same goes for backgrounds and environments. Now, you could skip drawing an environment. If your environment is something that you don't need precise accuracy, like nature or a basic plain city. However, let's say that your story takes place in a room where there are a lot of stuff. You would need to make concept art so that you can stay consistent while drawing your characters in that space. Now, we're not making an animation here, so you don't have to draw an entire background on every single panel. Just maybe once on every page is enough so that the reader knows where the characters are in the story. But that's up to you. I'm still figuring this shit out, so I tend to draw backgrounds on as many panels as I can. I just tried to be smart about it and draw something simple, like trees. Over and over and over and over and over. Yeah, I started losing it at one point. And let's be honest, who likes drawing backgrounds? I mean, there are some people, but they're few. Maybe when the time comes, I'll probably use a 3D software like many webcomic artists. My problem with 3D backgrounds is that if you don't blend them very well, they can stand out of your art style way too much. But it's definitely something to consider when you're going to use the same environment 500 times. Sizes. I'll try not to make it as boring as it could be. I still haven't printed my comic yet, but here's what I've learned so far. Comic sizes, they differ. there are US standards, EU standards, manga sizes as you know are smaller. So before you start, you have to do a little research of what can fit your comic the best. For ease of use, I use template by this guy. I'll leave it in the description. I believe Clip Studio Paint has built-in. I don't know, I've never used it, but I've seen it has a lot of helpful tools for creating a comic. Okay, this template will help me better explain this to you. Now, as you can see, you have 3 areas, and they're really necessary if you're planning to print the thing. You have a save zone, you have a trim size, and you have bleed. So the save zone is self-explanatory, is where your artwork will be safe and won't be cut at all. I even like to put a black border around the save zone while I'm drawing and check it from time to time, just to be extra sure that I'm not crossing it while I'm drawing or adding text and any of that important stuff. Now the trim line indicates the full and final size of your page. But since every printer cuts a bit differently, it's a bit of a tricky area. It can cut a bit inside of the trim line or outside of the trim line. So there's a chance a text or a character can be cut by the printer, so just keep everything important in the save zone area. And bleed is that extra area that ensures the printer won't cut outside of the trim line, so you won't get these white edges everywhere. However, what most people don't take into consideration is the spine zone, or the gutter.
Text or important images close to it can get really obscured and mess up your entire flow, you know?
So you gotta be careful with your spreads. I still haven't done a spread, but it's a good thing to know. If you're working traditionally, I know there are brands of paper that come with templates, so you just have to look that up and see what you can find. Storyboarding and layout. This is probably the most important stage in the whole comic book making process. So in the beginning, when you start drawing anything, you start with rough sketches and gesture drawing. And the same goes when drawing comics. This is the stage where you experiment, make the tough choices and drastic changes. Cause it's just easier to change it when your stuff still look like crap, opposed to when you've made your clean line art but soon realize that you could have made it in a different angle or something else, and you have to erase the whole thing and it's harder because you already built an emotional connection to your drawing. You probably know what it is. I think my process is similar to most comic book artists out there, and that's first drawing my rough sketches on all of my pages, then line art, then flat colors, shadows, lights and effects, and finally text. Opposed to drawing one page from start to finish. I just rather have all of my pages completed at 20% instead of having one at 100 and the others at 0. Now you might think I sounded real smart right here, but I've missed an important step that kinda ruined my entire comic book. And that's not making thumbnails. At this point, probably all artists except for me start with thumbnails, and they're just great for brainstorming anything, not only comics. In short, thumbnails will help you build the flow better, make the pages more connected to each other, and help you see if your composition and layouts actually work. But in this reality, my thumbnails never existed, so here's what happened. So usually, since this is supposed to be a Western style comic, the action can be used to guide the viewer's eye from left panel to right panel and eventually to the right page. And yeah, I think mine starts well in the first panel and then loses itself a little bit. You can obviously see that the action is going to the left, especially in the last panel where the bear is pushing the main character to the previous page. And I did try to imagine the lighting, action, location, and just everything happening in 3D space as if it's a game, so that my scenes could stay consistent. But for some reason I was fixated only on one side of the fight. And it didn't come to my mind that I could have just rotated the camera from the very beginning and fixed all of my problems early on. I believe the origin of where I messed up is because I used the Procreate thumbnails as thumbnails for my comic. Where, as you can see, every new page I make goes on top. Now that we've got that out of the way, how can we actually improve our visual storytelling? Well, sadly, drawing pinups and characters from only one angle can make the story boring and repetitive. And also, let's be honest, that won't help you elevate your artistic skills. So composition, lighting, different angles, use of different perspective of different focal length can drastically impact the feel of every single scene. In short, you're gonna have to think a little bit like a cinematographer.
Now I'm gonna show you my cinematography skills on some of my pages.
And we're gonna start with the very first panel. We can see the characters walking through the forest, but the placement of the camera angle is not random, it's from above, almost as if they're being watched. There's tension, they're so small that the environment gives this feel of an unknown and overwhelming place. Or at least that was my goal while I was drawing it. And compared to my first draft when you can only see the forest, I mean, it's an okay shot, but to me it looks like as if the characters are going sightseeing or something. For the next panel, I really tried to emulate this feel that the characters were walking through the forest for a while now. I don't know if one panel was enough for that effect. Maybe I should have added one more just to show the passing of time or something. And I tried to leave cliffhangers on as many pages as I can. Just like this one, where the master senses the danger and you know the enemy is arriving, but you have to flip to the next page to see it happening. Now on the last panel of the second page,
we can see the big reveal of the monster.
The bear has taken over the entire page, because this is an introduction shot of a really strong enemy. And when something is portrayed from a low angle, you have this sense of dominance, of power. Now here on the 6th page, what's happening is what I like to call a final blow page or a special attack page. It has more contrast and the style is a bit different because I just want to showcase that strong moment for the character, kinda like what they do in a Kamigaki or Noragami. Okay, I know that I've done the artwork and everything and I'm now editing the video, but now when I look at this page, it kind of reminds me of something.
Foolish samurai warrior wielding a magic sword stepped forth to oppose me.
God damn it.
We have happy accidents.
On the 7th page, Yaku is telling the origin of the creature they're fighting. And since it's some sort of a retrospective, I don't know if you can see it, but I put a comic texture over the panels that have sort of a flashback. As you know, many flashbacks in animated shows, in movies, or even in comics have some sort of a filter or a style change that tells the audience that this has already happened in the past. And on the last panel, I tried to completely use negative space with only 2 values so that the rogue creatures seem more mysterious and scared. Now for the 11th page on the last panel, I don't know, for some reason I wasn't able to draw the bear's legs. They just locked off in all of my attempts. So I covered them.
Here's the first rule in comic books that every comic book artist is taught. If in doubt, black it out. If you're not good at something, hide it. If you can't draw feet, make sure that they're always standing in thick grass.
What can I say? I learned from the best.
To design the layouts of my pages, I always think of where the story is at on the very first panel and more importantly, where it should be on the very last panel. And when I have these two things, I can now shape my page around them. And whenever I can, I also try to use the story to shape my page's design. For example, here I used the lightning from Yaku's dark story to shape the panels and also lead you with it to the last panel. I did a similar thing with the bear's powers on the second page. And throughout the page I always try to answer some questions that you might have had from the previous ones and possibly give you new ones by the end of the page, which could explain my fast pacing actually.
Color, lighting and line weight. Now I didn't do something groundbreaking with my coloring and lighting, it's a very short comic after all, but when done well they can impact the emotion and overall mood of the page. There's just the whole entire color psychology, where different colors make us feel in a different way. But color can be a choice, especially if you know how to use negative space. You can add so much drama, depth and emotion only with lighting. And depth can also be achieved through line variation, where things close to us are more detailed with more thicker lines, and things receding in the distance gradually lose their details, giving us this illusion of atmospheric perspective. Now when I look back at it, I don't think I did that very well. Thank God it was the colors that saved the day. Now, if the line art path is not your thing, you can totally skip it. We just live in a day and age where you can draw your comic in any style you like. Lop, who is one of my favorite artists, has made his comic in his painterly style. And because of that, it's amazing. It definitely stands out from every other comic. Next stage, text. That's it. I think that captures the whole text effects, bubbles, whatever the fuck. Text balloons are another important part that can guide the viewer's eye through the page. Speech bubbles come in a variety of styles, depending on the character's emotions or if he's some sort of a monster. Now my comic doesn't have a variety of balloons, that's why I can't say much about it, but for all of my speech bubbles I just like to put them in the sketching stage, even just handwrite my text. Because I don't want to be on a spot where I have to cover with a balloon an important scene or a character.
Now here's how I do my balloons, in case you wanna know.
So let's say we have a text like this one. It's no use or whatever. Now what I do is I make a new layer and with the white hard brush, and make sure it's a hard brush, I paint under it until I get the shape of the balloon. Then I go to the lasso tool, but the angular one, not the standard one. And with it I make the triangular looking thingy that points to the character, or the tail of the balloon, I don't know how they call it. Then I fill it with white so it can blend with the other shape we have. Then we double click on the layer, click on stroke, and for the size I set it to 5. You can play around with the thickness, see what works for you and what doesn't depending on your canvas size. And voila! Your speech bubble is done. And with this you can make any shape and any balloon you like. And I personally like it when my balloons are not perfectly rounded, as you can see they're a little bit wobbly. That way they just look a little bit less artificial to me. And yeah, now you know. Now the text effects part, or as they call it, onomatopoeia.
Onomatopoeia.
Oh, that was a wild card to me, not gonna lie.
Now in my defense, English is not my first language, so I found it hard spelling different sounds.
I mean, I get the most common ones, kaboom, splash and all that stuff, but there are just some that when I read them in a comic, I'm just confused what the fuck are they supposed to sound like. I mean, from the art, I know what they're supposed to be. I don't know, do professionals come up with these words, or there's some rules that I need to follow? Like, when I'm drawing a machine gun, does it always has to be braka 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 instead of or I don't know how I actually think it's supposed to sound. In the end, I just had to Google most of them to see the proper spelling of the sounds. I just found out that there's a real DC villain called Onomatopoeia, which explains a lot of things. But man, when you know what you're doing, you can really elevate your storytelling. And lastly, references. You know this already, you can never go wrong with using references for whatever you're creating. Pinterest is still the best place for that, from character design ideas to visual storytelling, but sometimes there are specific angles that is hard to find reference for. Yeah, I know this looks cursed. I work with what I have, okay? But yeah, this 3D browser app called Pose My Art is actually pretty cool. It definitely has helped me to draw more believable poses and scenes. The other alternative is Magic Poser, I believe. But I especially like this one because it has tons of free preset poses that you can choose, ranging from fight scenes, walking, sitting, jumping, whatever you can think of, it's probably there, and they're adding even more. And even you can select the preset pose and then after that tweak it to your liking. Or you know, you can use a 3D model like the ones on Sketchfab where you can even view it from every angle. The next best alternative is to have an action figure with articulation. I like to use Spider-Man because, well, it's Spider-Man and it has more personality than those figures designed for drawing.
Now, I have to mention how to draw comics the Marvel way and framed ink.
Gee, they both sound so good.
Even though it's a notebook, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way is great for beginners. It just prepares you to draw anything in general and covers a lot of art fundamentals. Framed ink, on the other hand, is a bit more advanced.
From the name you would think that it's only about inking, it's just the book has anything to make your storytelling great, from how to frame your shots, camera lenses, using negative space, flow of the action, and so much more. And let me tell you something. Drawing a comic, especially as a beginner, can be really overwhelming.
I, for one, am slow even at drawing single illustrations, and comics are many illustrations on a single page.
And it took me 6 months to complete a 15-page comic, which compared to a professional is kind of pathetic. But also I managed to do it because I didn't stress myself out by having imaginary deadlines. I did it at my own pace and ultimately I didn't burn out. I mean, yeah, it could have been a lot better, but this is only the beginning, and I'm sure that there will be many more comics to draw and stories to tell in the future. So I believe in you, you can do it, and I'll see you on the next video. Hopefully it won't take me 2 years again. See ya!
Now that's a satisfying ending.
Се случва на един панел.
на следващия панел ти отговаряш. Развиеш и сте в... сте в... Такова.